Welcome to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs, where you'll find real stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts you need for entrepreneurship. If you've ever felt like midlife was too late to launch a business, write a book, or chase a dream, think again. I'm Lynette Turner, your host, and I'm bringing you inspiring conversations and practical tips to help nudge you forward and keep growing in midlife. So let's jump in. Well, I have Courtney Townley with me today here on Midlife Women Entrepreneurs. You've got such a good journey and a story. And when we were on our pre-call, you said something to me about my podcast that was just so insightful. I thought, how does this woman already know this? And you called it Room for Women to Borrow Beliefs. And I think that is such a testament to what you do for your women that you coach. And so I can't wait to get into this interview today. So thank you for that insight, and thank you for joining me today. And I'm going to hand the floor over to you. Give yourself a bit of a background and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And I do think we need more rooms where people can borrow beliefs from, because we tend to borrow beliefs that hurt us rather than help us. And you have absolutely created a room through your podcast of useful beliefs, empowering beliefs, really supportive beliefs. And we need more of that. So yeah, like you said, my name's Courtney Townley, and I have been in the women's wellness world for 30 years. And that's looked like a lot of different things. I always joke that I came into the world a dancer. I mean, literally, I think I came dancing out of the womb. And I literally kind of fell into the professional dance world, which was wonderful until I realized that I was going to have to actually put food on my table. And at the time, it just wasn't a super lucrative career. So I naturally fell into teaching fitness classes. And that was wonderful. Like, I really loved teaching movement to other people. But I quickly realized that my clients were asking a lot of questions I couldn't answer. Why don't I sleep well at night? How can I eat better? Why do I still just not feel great, right? And all I had was movement to teach them. So I, of course, dove into more and more education. I went and got certified with Precision Nutrition, which is a behavior change school that really focuses heavily on helping people with eating patterns and behaviors. And that too was wonderful until I just felt like people were so hyper-focusing on diet and exercise, but I could see that at the root, that wasn't really the problem. The problem was people were feeling kind of apathetic or uninspired about their lives. People had self-narrative that was knocking them down rather than building them up. I was working with a lot of women who were trying to be all things to all people at all times, and that was burning them out. So diet and exercise wasn't going to address those kinds of problems. So again, I always call my wellness journey the proverbial onion, because I kept peeling back layers to figure out, like, how can I help people better? And so anyway, I went on to get a lot more educated in mindset and self-leadership and the skill sets that help us to do those things. And today I basically call myself a health and self-leadership coach, because it just kind of brings together all of those bits from my past, but in a way that really puts the power in my client's hands and helps her to, I always say, it's not just creating a once-in-a-lifetime transformation, it's helping her to build a life of transformation, because that's what life is, right? It's so much transformation.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, while you were saying that, while you were giving your introduction, I thought to myself, this is clearly somebody who solved a problem for herself first and then naturally evolved, because to have that sort of insight to, okay, well, it was more than just the diet. It was more, you were sort of handling what they call in sales the first objection, but it really wasn't the real objection. It's like getting, peeling back the layers of the onion. So
Yes.
Talk a little bit about your personal journey that got you to where you are today.
Yeah. So, I mean, naturally, as a dancer, you sort of are conditioned to be body obsessed, right? That it's always about how thin, how lean, how, I don't know, just all of those things that women, unfortunately, are kind of suffocating under. But it's even more so in that world because your body is your instrument. And I was very much caught up in that, so much so that I spent almost a decade of my career in the realm of fat loss, because that's what everybody was hungry for. It's still what everybody's hungry for. And I had a lot of women coming to me with this belief that if I just lose the weight, everything will be okay. But what I was seeing as evidence, because I helped a lot of people lose a lot of weight, and their very real problems were still there, right? The broken marriage, the career they hated, the not sleeping at night, the not liking themselves. yes, getting more fit, losing weight helps on a physiological level to some degree, but it doesn't solve what I call integrity pain. And integrity pain is living your life misaligned with how you actually want to be living it. And we all have integrity pain. But what integrity pain does is it creates unnecessary stress. And the more unnecessary stress we have in our life, the more cortisol we have running rampant through our system. And as a midlife woman, we have less of the hormones on board that actually help us to manage cortisol because progesterone and estrogen are leaving the party. So, I really just came to this place through being body obsessed for a while. And then also the birth of my son. So I had my son when I was about 35 years old. He's 16 now. I think the real pivotal moment for me was I came home from the hospital. I had a pretty traumatic birth. I mean, everything worked out well in the end, but it was pretty traumatic. I was reeling as a new mother. Like I know I always say some women waltz into motherhood. I face planted into motherhood. And when all my friends and family came to the house to see me, you know what they all said? Wow, Courtney, you lost your baby weight so fast. That was the focus. So I was emotionally, mentally, physically at the lowest point I had probably ever been in my life. And the sole focus of conversation was my body. And that was the moment. And it was like obviously a series of moments because it was a season of my life where I was like, okay, something is seriously wrong with the way that we have taught people to see health. Because I lost a lot of baby weight because I literally had to have a blood transfusion, right? Like it was just this very traumatic experience. But that doesn't mean I'm healthy right now. I'm not healthy on any front. I was also at that time working with a lot of midlife women where I was kind of seeing a similar effect. They were making their body the problem, but the weight of their body wasn't the problem. It was the weight of their life that was the problem.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's such a good way of putting it. The weight of your life. So, okay. So you have one thing that really stood out for me on our pre-call is that you have this philosophy of getting yourself to this place of self-coaching. And so tell us a little bit about your program and a little bit of that philosophy as well.
Yeah. So again, for probably the first half of my career, I always gave out a list of rules and regulations, a checklist to follow, a meal plan to follow, like protocol to follow, right? And that works really well for a while. But as humans, we love to be self-directed. In fact, there's some really interesting research around the power of being self-directed, where we tend to show up more easily for things that we have decided to do, not things that people have told us we should be doing. And so I just kind of kept seeing this level of success in my client, but then there was also a level of pushback when they got to a certain point where they didn't want to keep doing the things. And they wanted to live their life in a way that was more in alignment with all of their likes and dislikes. And self-leadership to me is really, maybe this will sum it up for you. I tell my clients essentially, I will be your coach until you are ready and willing to assume that role yourself. Because that's ultimately what it's going to take for you to find a place of deep health, is you have to be the ultimate leader of your own process. So I can walk alongside you for a while to help make that a little easier. But there comes a point where you're going to have to take the reins and lead yourself because you're not going to be with me the rest of your life.
It's exactly. It's kind of like working your way out of a job. I mean, I think any good leader or anybody who's really good at what they do is they get you to a place where you don't need them anymore. It's almost like cognitive behavioral therapy. They give you all these tools, but they never really teach you how to use them in your day to day. And so it's up to you to learn how to use them and apply them, like pull them out of the toolbox when necessary. So that's what it reminded me of and that's really sort of giving of you as well. It feels like you celebrate when a client says, I don't need you anymore, Courtney, but I want to stay with you anyway.
I know. I mean, it's interesting because I used to, and I still do a lot of one-to-one work, like private client work, but there came a point where obviously I had to build a community because I can only handle so much one-to-one client work. And I was really resistant to it for a long time because I always thought there's no way working in a group is going to give people the same benefit as working one-to-one with somebody, right? Like that was just a belief I had. And I love proving myself wrong. And that's exactly what that did. Like starting a group environment totally proved me wrong because what it showed me is so much of what women are missing in the wellness space are the rooms where they can normalize these conversations, that it's not about diet and exercise. Like that's a part of it, but it's about so much more. And what are the rooms we go into to talk about how to process emotion? Where are the rooms that we go into to learn how to parent our brains? Where are the rooms that we go into to talk about the relationships in our life that are nourishing us and malnourishing us? I wanted those rooms, but I couldn't find them. So I built it. I built a room. And those are the conversations that we have in my community. And all of it's in devotion to elevating your health, because the less stress you have in your life, the healthier you will be. And I'm not saying that all stress is bad. Like we all know that there's good stress. Like I am always encouraging my clients to lean into things that are stressful, but that will expand their life. Like chasing the job you've always wanted, like having difficult conversations to improve relationships. Those are all stressful things, but they have benefit on the other side. But the stress that I'm talking about unpacking is the stress that really has no benefit. It's just depleting. It's the wear and tear. It's the stuff that leads to burnout. And so I help women do those two things in my community. I help them to reduce unnecessary stress, and I help them to lean into what I call purposeful stress with intention. So we're leaning into certain stressors on purpose. A great example of this, just so people can have a clear idea, like strength training is purposeful stress. I'm purposefully putting my muscles under tension so that they become more robust and healthy. Maybe I decide to move to it because didn't you recently move? Didn't you tell me that in our pre-call?
Yeah.
You just moved somewhere?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Yeah. And that's purposeful stress. There's a reason you moved. There was some benefit to your life that you were after, that you decided to lean into that discomfort on purpose. And those kinds of decisions I have found put more life into our life. And that's what health is. It's how many deposits am I making in my day-to-day that is actually helping me to put more life into my life.
Yeah, that's excellent. I have a question for you from when you said there was only so many clients you could take from a
Yes.
one-on-one perspective. So therefore you created this community. And I think there's a lot of coaches out there that think that same way.
Yeah.
And you think, well, but my one-on-one is I'm able to build this safe place, this trust with this relationship. How do you create a community now that weaves in that vein of trust, that you're still leading it? I do believe strongly that a community should start to take hold and support the community as well. But you still have to be sort of there as the conductor. So
absolutely.
yeah. So how did you sort of manage that? First of all, the mindset shift on would this work? And then how do you manage it now that you do have it?
So I think the first step, which I think is really the first step of anything, is that we have to be willing to experiment. And I was really resistant to the experiment for a really long time. Honestly, I look back and I think I wasted so much time because I was so convinced that the group setting would not be as productive or as wonderful or as life-giving.
Or effective, or would they feel like they're getting stuff from it that they would get totally from you, and even as fast from you, because if I'm working one-on-one with you, I'm getting immediate aha moments. Like 2 minutes into our pre-call, I mentioned at the beginning, I'm like, oh my God, I've already okay, wait, I'm supposed to be interviewing you.
I think what saves me and what really allowed me to lean into the experiment was it being very clear on the objective of my work, which is self-leadership. And so being in community where people had to figure out some things themselves and they had to be willing to rumble. So my community is called Rumble and Rise.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're rumbling on purpose. And so to be in community of women who are all kind of dedicated to different ways of elevating their health, but they're all willing to rumble and they're all willing to practice the skill sets I teach so they can rise sooner. And when we do that in front of people, when we do that publicly, something really beautiful is born that could be born no other way, right? Because it's almost like you're witnessing these women kind of stepping out into who they are authentically meant to be. And that drives your own process because it's so inspiring. And so I think partly what makes my community work is that, like, number one is the facilitator. I have to make hard decisions. I'm not trying to scale into like the tens of thousands of members. Like that's not something I'm interested in because I want it to be an intimate experience. But I also had to kind of give up control that I was the only person they were going to be learning from because that has not actually been true at all. They learn so much from each other. They see themselves so much in one another And that's something I was robbing them of when I was only doing one-to-one coaching.
Yeah, I love what you just said there because that's that community taking hold, you know? So now you become this sort of master facilitator, but still creating this environment for them to have those authentic and vulnerable and to actually step up and even say something because it can get crickets in some of those communities, you know?
Yeah, it becomes its own ecosystem. So in my community, obviously, I still work with some of my members one-to-one. They hire me to work with them privately. But then I have women who are simply members and they just come to group coaching calls. I have women who are members who I've never seen on a group coaching call, but I know they're listening to replays. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure experience. Whatever level of support you need, you're going to get.
Yeah.
But you have to take ownership of how you get the most out of the space. And like, personally, I've been a part of a lot of communities. I don't love being on group coaching calls as a consumer. I would rather be on a one-to-one call or I'd rather listen to a replay. That's just what works for me. And so I have to just respect that my community members are the same. But it's really interesting because you usually see a lot of the same faces on group coaching calls.
Yeah.
But then I get emails from the rest of the community saying, oh, I just listened to that call on Wednesday and here's what I learned, or this was my takeaway. So I'm just creating the content and creating the room, but how people actually consume in there is up to them.
Exactly. So a couple of things that I want to
Yes.
go into next is on our pre-call, you said at one point during your journey, you weren't really delivering at your full potential. But you felt though that the clients were still happy. They were clearly still happy. So tell us a little bit about that and what sort of finally pushed you into that full self.
I love that you're asking this because I just did a podcast on this I used this example in the podcast the other
Okay.
day. I was thinking about it as unnecessary labor. So for about 5 years of my career, I was working unnecessarily hard because I wasn't giving myself permission to evolve. And I wasn't giving myself permission to evolve because I was afraid of how other people would react. They wouldn't like my decision. I would make them upset. I would make them uncomfortable. My parents wouldn't understand, like all the things. And I got to a point where that level of discomfort from not going down the path I knew I was meant to go down was so unbearable that I finally just took the leap. And once I took the leap, I was like, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? I mean, life is immediately so much better. And it really was. But to give you some like maybe more detail around that, I'd basically been working as a personal trainer and as a nutrition coach out of a brick and mortar studio. I had a very full business. I had very happy customers, and I was probably delivering at about 60% of my capacity. And I am somebody who I don't like delivering at 60%. I want to be full out, full on, fully expressed. So that was painful for me. It was painful for me to see how happy people were with not my full self. And so I think that recognition and then just also really just not being happy with the routine of the way I was delivering information. I really wanted to be having bigger conversations. I wanted to be pushing them in different ways, but the container that I had built didn't really allow for that. Or so I thought. So basically, I just decided at some point that I was going to move my entire business online, that I was going to start having these more expansive conversations. And I also acknowledged that I knew this wouldn't be for everybody. And that was okay. I love you. I am so glad I got to travel with you for as long as I did. But now maybe this is complete. Maybe our relationship is complete here. Those of you who do want to go with me, get on board. Like, come with me. And many did. Right? Like that is how I started my online business, is I already had a following of customers. But then I also grew customers because I was starting to attract people that might not have been attracted to what I was doing prior.
Yeah. Okay. So when I think about what you just said there,
Yes.
for anybody that's listening who also knows she's a bit misaligned in whatever way, maybe she's not at full capacity. Maybe she's just like, oh, I'm hating this part of my business. But she's terrified to pivot because you
Yes.
could have said, oh God, I'm going to stay because I don't want to lose my clients. What does that misalignment feel like in your body, your mindset, and like in your daily life so that they can learn to recognize that and then not be so terrified or afraid to make a pivot?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, I think I'll address like the last thing you asked, which was like, how do we not fear it? And I think that like any emotion, all emotions are messengers. They have intel for you, really good intel for you about how you're living your life, how you're interpreting your life. And if we don't pay attention to the intel, we can't benefit from the intel. So inviting yourself in to at least hear the message, I think is a first step. And for me, I think that internal friction, and I'm sure everyone feels this a little bit differently, but it was, again, for lack of a better way of saying it, was that integrity pain. It was like this internal friction I woke up with every day, that I just had this knowing that this isn't it. This isn't it. I just know in my bones that this is not the end of the story here. Yeah. And I also simultaneously, knowing that it wasn't it, felt this pull on my heart to pursue these other conversations in a different way, in a different medium, which was online versus a brick and mortar studio. And I think what prevented me also wasn't just other people's disappointment or feelings about it, but was also the fact that I couldn't see the whole pathway to success. I mean, how often does that stop women? We can't get up the whole staircase right away. And so we just say, oh, it's not for me because I'm too old. I don't know how it's all going to work out, like whatever the self-narrative might be. So I had to accept that I know enough right now to just take the next step. Yeah. And the discomfort of not changing just got way more intense than the comfort of, so I decided to change because it just felt easier at that point because I was so tired of feeling like, I don't know if I can cuss on your show, but half-assing my life.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, I always use the word I'm done. Like I'm just done with this part of my life. But then, you get a little tripped up and then you get a little bit into, more into midlife. And then I've seen many women shrink as they enter into this stage. You did mention it, you start to climb the ladder, but you don't know where the top is, sort of thing. I paraphrased there.
Yeah.
But so why do you think we avoid this calling? Like, we all have a calling, right? As you had mentioned, we've got that subconscious voice or that intuition. You're presented with this opportunity. You see it. You've got this idea, but yet that voice gets louder and louder to say, no, you're going to fail or whatever. But intuitively that you should be going that way.
Which is why if you are not careful about who you let sit on your shoulder, meaning the voices in your head, if you do not fiercely edit the tape that's playing in your head, you will never pursue the things that you're called to do. You will never be a fully expressed human. And to me, that when people ask me what health is, I always say it's becoming a fully expressed human, whatever that means for you. And the reason we're not fully expressed is because we all have malnourishment in some way. And I know we think of malnourishment as, not coming from food, but I think of malnourishment as anything that robs me of my life force. And when I don't go after the things that are pulling on my heartstrings that really just feel right and good and like they would allow me to be more expressed, I am literally responsible for my own malnourishment.
I love that word. And I love that sort of metaphor, that how you're using it. It makes me think skills, like even just learning something new, that is, I think, malnourishment. It's robbing yourself from being nourished with new updated skills. Like, learn how to use some of these AI tools. Who cares how you're going to use it in your business? I'm going to give you a little example. I just bought a program, cheap and cheerful, but it teaches you how to make AI models. And I have no idea how I'm going to use that in my business, but just something told me to buy this program and learn it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm realizing is there's a whole world out there of AI generated models that are doing a lot in the social media aspects of things. But even like yesterday, I was sitting down, I started listening to the videos, and I just got this overwhelming sense of like, oh God, this is so uncomfortable. What? Oh, another tool? I've got to learn another tool. Oh, but then I realized, you know what? Even just producing my podcast, I've had to learn a lot of tools. And so I think this is such a good word, this malnourishment is such a good metaphor for beyond just, like you said, the nutrition side of it. It's really good.
It is. And like you look at, I always use the analogy of plants because for so many years, I was a terrible plant owner. But what you start realizing is that every plant has a different set of care. It's not just water them and put them in sunlight. I wish it was that easy. It's not, right? Like some like the corner and some like to be watered every 2 weeks and some like to be watered, multiple times a week. And I think that that's how humans are. We all have different needs. We all have different nourishment. And I know we boiled down health to this conversation of diet and exercise. And there's lots of ways we can be malnourished in that. But when we think more expansive than that, Like, I haven't been happy in my career in 10 years. Well, what if you paid closer attention to that? And what if you started giving yourself some things that nourished that and solved that problem? I bet your health would improve,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so I just think it gives us maybe a larger lens to look through when we think of it as malnourishment on every front of our life versus malnourishment is only something that comes from nutrition. So not
Yeah,
true.
no.
And there's
Yeah,
lots of
I
things that
love it.
nourish your life. Like, is the way that you're spending time on social media nourishing you or depleting you? Is the way that
Mhm.
you're eating nourishing you or depleting? Is the amount of time you're sleeping and recovering, is that nourishing you or depleting you? Like, if you
Yeah.
look through every aspect of your life with that question, you're going to start to find a lot of malnourishment. And if you solve any of that malnourishment, your health is going to improve.
Right. So everything you're saying there just reminds me of the framework that you use and starting first with awareness. So why don't you walk through the framework that you take people through in your programs?
Sure. So I teach a framework called the Consistency Code. And this is actually my book that's coming out this fall. It's called the Consistency Code. But it basically, instead of giving people a list of rules and regulations, it is exactly what you just said. It's a framework that people can circle back to throughout the rest of their life, regardless of their dietary or exercise preferences, because it's not about diet and exercise. So there's 4 parts to the framework. The first part is awareness. You can't heal what you don't see, period. Right? Like,
Mhm.
you got to take a look. I always call it like lifting up the rug to see the dirt underneath. That's what we
Oh,
have to
God.
do. And we don't like that part. We avoid it like the plague. And it, of course, has a lot of consequences when we don't look at the mess underneath. So I think
Right.
coaches can be really instrumental in this because a good coach is really good at asking pointed questions to help you see where the malnourishment is, to see where the integrity pain is, to see the places and spaces we've been avoiding in our life. So awareness is 101. Once we see the mess, we get to start cleaning up the mess. And it's kind of like if I walked into a home, like let's just say that I left for the weekend and my son decided to have a raging party and didn't clean up. When I come home, it's kind of overwhelming. Not only would I be angry, but I would be overwhelmed because there's so much mess. And I can't clean up all the mess at once. I have to decide to start cleaning somewhere. And
Mhm.
that's the next step is I call it basically the plan for sovereignty, which is just the practice of organization. Now that you see your malnourishment spots, maybe you see your integrity pain, where are we going to start cleaning it up first? And a lot of people say, I have no idea. We'll try to just pick a less overwhelming place for them to start so it feels like an easy entry. And we start organizing their day. So let's just say somebody says, I really need to get better sleep because my sleep is affecting everything. I need to get myself to bed on time. I need to get up at a reasonable time. Okay, let's start there. So how do we organize you today to make sure that you keep that commitment? Right? That's a lot of people skip that step. But if you're not putting forethought into how you're going to make it happen, it's not happening.
Right.
So then we have a plan. And then inevitably what happens is we don't follow through with the plan. We negotiate and rationalize and compromise our way out of our own plans because we're so used to, especially as women, we're so good at putting ourselves on the back burner. Something else is more important. Someone else's crisis is more important than mine or needs more attention than I do. So we go into a space of breaking that habit. The third step is the practice of follow through. And that really involves 2 big skill sets. Number 1, you got to be willing to feel uncomfortable because you're not going to want to do the things you said you would do all the time. You're just not. But I can not want to do something and still do it because I have that power to parent my brain. And that's that second skill. I have to manage my mind in a way that motivates me rather than makes me not want to do it. So that's where the practice of follow through is. And then the final piece is just the practice of realignment. Because we're all human and we all might find traction for a bit. And then what happens is life happens and we find ourselves going down roads we didn't mean to be on. And we get a little lost in the woods and we get a little lost at sea. And when you recognize, there's the power of awareness again, when you recognize that you're not showing up as the woman you really want to be, we don't have to create Oscar-winning scripts about how terrible we are as people. We simply need to say, oh, wow, okay, I'm traveling the wrong direction. So I need to reroute. I need to realign. If you were going to go to the grocery store today to buy groceries and there was a detour or you got lost, I'm pretty sure you would not pull over on the side of the road and pitch a fit for the next year.
Or forget about the groceries.
Right. You would just look at some signposts. Maybe you would ask somebody for a little help. Maybe you would reference the app on your phone to show you a different route. Why don't we do that with our health and with our happiness and with the goals that we have in our life. It really is that simple. It's just a matter of rerouting. I took a wrong turn. So what? Now what? It's my favorite question. Right. So what? Now what?
One thing I did last night actually was I didn't want to continue watching these videos. I was getting kind of like stressed out about them because, oh my God, I'm learning something new. But I said to myself, which I've heard 100 times, but I've never actually practiced it. Okay, set the timer. So I didn't really want to do it, but I knew I had to do it. And so I set a timer and I said, okay, I'm going to just do this for the next hour. 8:00 now, I'm going to go till 9 p.m.
Yep.
And I did it. And so that's when you said like the realignment or, how can you kind of get through some of those points where you don't want to do them or it's hard to follow through or whatever the case may be. That's just know that, like you said, not everything is going to be something that you want to do. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows.
And here's the other piece, like what you hit on is so important. At midlife, I don't know a woman who doesn't have a tremendous amount of responsibilities. I don't know a woman who has a lot of extra resources on board in terms of time, energy, and mental bandwidth. She's looking to how to reclaim those things, right? I bring that up because if you disrespect your nervous system by the way you approach behavior change, you will not be successful. And the example you gave is perfect. I knew I was learning a new skill. I already knew I was feeling a little overwhelmed because it's one more thing to learn in my business. And you quickly recognize that if you put a time constraint on how much you're practicing that new thing, it would probably make you want to show up again today. But if you sat down right now and told yourself you were going to get through the whole course last night, you'd be miserable. And then you probably wouldn't show up today and you'd never want to look at the thing again.
Okay, so we've got the 4 awareness, organization, follow through, and realignment. I'm going to ask you a question under each one of those. So awareness, what are some signs that a midlife woman might be living by default, not design? And I strongly believe in my philosophy that we live largely on default. And so how, we look fine, we're feeling good, we feel like we're achieving our goals, but in fact, we're really on default and not by design.
Yeah. I would say one of the telltale signs is resentment, that you're kind of bitter about some of the things you're having to do in your life, or you're ending the day and you're never feeling satisfied. There's not a lot of fulfillment in your life. You're just kind of feeling like you're having to do life rather than you get to do life. Those are all very strong signposts that you're not living by design. You're just reacting to life, and that is exhausting and so unfulfilling. Your body's just, your brain and body are just in survival mode. And so you're just going through the motions every day. But that's not what makes us feel fulfilled. What makes us feel fulfilled is when we're present and engaged and focused and delighted and in awe. And that requires a design. So I would say if you're someone who feels like really kind of like you're delaying getting out of bed because you're kind of delaying the day because you're not excited about it, you're not living by design.
Okay, number 2, organization. So definitely in midlife, we get a little bit of fogginess.
Or a lot.
And we also get a little bit overloaded because I think that just things start to get a little overwhelming. We've got brain fog. We've got things going on. So what's just one little simple way a woman can start organizing herself so that she can create the change, but not feel overwhelmed?
Yeah, I would say, and this may not seem like an obvious answer, but I would say one of the most important places to start that exercise is I would challenge every woman listening to sit like just for 10 minutes today, make a cup of coffee, make a cup of tea, whatever, get into a private space and consider what health and happiness or even what health and success mean to you at this age and stage of your life. Because most women have not asked themselves that in a very long time. So they don't have clarity. They're just living by other people's standards and other people's expectations. And without that clarity, we can't design. It's like saying, I want to build my dream home, but I don't want to think about what that dream home might look like. But that's not going to work. So what does success mean to you at this stage of your life? Because I'll tell you, when I ask this question on coaching calls, it's usually not how people are living their life, right? Like a woman might come to me who has a very successful career and she works out every day and she's like doing all the things that outwardly look like she's successful. But she hired me because she's clearly not feeling success on a deep personal level. So when I ask her what success is, she might say, it's having a slow morning and not feeling like I have to rush out the door. Or it's feeling really connected in my marriage, which I haven't felt in 10 years. Or it's being able to travel more and have more time and space to myself. Okay, awesome. How do we bake that into your life? And we can't do it overnight because that feels overwhelming. But what are some simple decisions that we could start making? Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's an internet search. Maybe it's a conversation just to ignite that possibility.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, the third one, follow through. What tools or tool even, just because we want to just get started, that can help them build that capacity just to really sort of stay in motion, like someone who struggles with that consistency and then that self-doubt. Because I think as we start going down the path of doing things, that little voice starts getting in our head. And so we need to block the voice or learn to live with that voice and keep moving forward.
I love this.
But what tool would you recommend?
Super simple, which is just at the end of the day, before you go to bed, before you wind your day down, look over your schedule, like the things that you promised yourself you would do for the day, for yourself, not for everybody else. But what were the promises that you made to you on this day? And did you follow through? And if you didn't, again, we're not going to write this horrible script about what a terrible person you are. We're going to ask a very powerful question, which is, do I like my reasons? And I'll tell you 9 times out of 10, you're not going to like your reasons. And that's great. I don't like my reasons. So what can I do tomorrow to maybe reorganize? Or maybe I commit to less. Maybe I ask for some help. Maybe I put a sign on my door to not be disturbed, right? Like, what can I do so tomorrow I don't finish the day again saying I didn't follow through with a promise I made to myself?
Exactly.
We hear a lot about the importance of like a morning routine, like starting your day with intention, but I think we forget the power of closing your day with intention. And that's what I'm speaking to here, is just close the day by reassessing where you showed up and where you didn't. And do you like your reasons?
I love it. You know, every night I do a little to-do list checklist.
Yeah.
And I've got a to-do list that's 1,000 miles long, but obviously I've prioritized with little stars, and I'm still real old school. I use my notebook.
love
I
it.
put little squares and right. But, I need that to-do list. I've always needed that to-do list. And, but taking it to that next level of like what is important and, those little micro moments that you can feel like you accomplished something. So trying to jam a whole website development in one day is almost impossible. But hey, if I can pick the platform, okay, now I'm going to just kind of next day, just kind of work through in small little microbites. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So realignment, that's everything you just said, just kind of leads right into this natural process. So it's good. This has been a good little test of your framework, actually. Yeah. So big question. For any midlife women out there who are feeling like they maybe failed or are behind, how would you recommend they reframe alignment as part of a process, not of a flaw?
I love it. Again, a super simple question. Is the way that I'm thinking about this helping me or hurting me? That's it. Because failure is inevitable. I fail 1,000 times a day, every day. And if I make every failure mean that I'm never going to be successful, that I'm a terrible person, that I'm not very smart, that I shouldn't be in business, I will not show up tomorrow. Like, it is not helping me. It's just making everything harder. But if I look at failure and I think, and this sounds so cliche, but it has to be said. If I look at failure and think, okay, what did that teach me? What did I learn here? Where was the gold in this? What might I be thankful for in this experience? That gives me a lens of like, all of that's very helpful because I'm going to find evidence for the things I ask about, right? So if I'm looking for evidence of how I can talk to myself in a way that helps me, I'm going to behave in a way that helps me to find more evidence of that. But if I'm looking for evidence on the ways that I'm hurting myself, I'm going to find that too. And I'm going to do more of that. So simply, it doesn't matter if it's with failure, with procrastination, with a big mistake that you made at your job. Am I thinking about this in a way that's going to help to move me forward? Or am I thinking about it in a way that's going to hold me back? Right. It's that simple.
So it's your conscious and your subconscious working together. That's perfect. So Courtney, one last question, and then I want you to tell everybody where they can find you. What are the top 3 traits you see in a woman who is considered a self-led woman?
Top 3 traits in a woman who is considered self-led. Okay, I'm going to start with self-respect because you will never lead yourself in a powerful way if you do not respect yourself. And that means you believe that you have value without external validation. It means that no matter how many times you fail, you will have your own back. But self-respect is 101. Self-respect is 101. I would say also the ability to just critically examine, but with compassion. I'm willing to look closely at my life and the decisions that I make so I can really get straight with myself. Not only if I like what I do, but if I like my reasons for doing what I do. And I say that because I know a lot of women who exercise fiercely and eat salads every day, 3 meals a day. Not because they like their reasons, but because they don't think they have value and they're trying to get other people to like them or love them or give them attention or whatever it is. So that critical examination with compassion and with grace is really a potent piece. And then I would say the third characteristic of a woman who is self-led, I would say, kind of circling back to what we said earlier, a willingness to experiment. And baked in that is a willingness to decide fast, to decide hard, meaning you're all in with your decisions, and to make hard decisions. Because here's the thing, every time you say yes to something means you're saying no to something else. And if you're really clear with yourself about what you're sacrificing on purpose in devotion to this life you want to live, it gets easier to not be a part of all things, right? But deciding hard, I think, is a big one. Being a powerful decision maker. Again, you won't ever do that if you don't have self-respect.
Yeah, no, those were good. Okay, Courtney, where is somebody going to find you?
Yeah, probably the best place is just my website, graceandgrit.com. It'll take them all the places they need to go. They can find about programs and podcasting and the book and all the stuff. So graceandgrit.com is the best place.
Amazing. And Courtney, good luck with the book launch. Please come back because we should talk about the book when you're done.
I would love
it. When you get it all launched as part of your PR campaign, let's do it.
Let's do it. Please.
So thanks for reaching out. Thank you for joining me today. You were a wealth of information. This is a long episode, but it's a goodie. So thank you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, it's Lynette. Thanks for listening today. Please like and subscribe. And if there's somebody out there that you think could benefit from the episode, give it a share. Midlife is your time, so go get it.